Hello, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another week in this The Year of the Werewolf. How are you doing? I am still here, so that's a good sign. How are you? So let's get into it. This week, okay, so I was unable to get to everything last week, and let me explain. Part of it was because my husband was out of town and I was doing everything here by myself and got a weensy bit overwhelmed, just a little bit. Another reason was because I was having a really hard time finishing the book that I had started that week. There was something going on pretty much from the beginning of this book that I found very off-putting, and it made it not so enjoyable to continue picking it up for me. As usual, please keep in mind these things are subjective. I'm talking about my feelings on something. But I did end up being able to finish the book this week. And I didn't like it. I didn't like the werewolf book. I hated it, actually. And bless my husband and Mary and Matt for listening to me angrily rant about this book because I hated it. So as is normal here, I won't be talking about it. Now I'm going to give you a gift. If you are like me, let's be honest, and you're a bit nosy, what my mother would call nibby, you can follow me on Goodreads and you'll see what I'm reading. It's not juicy over there though, because if I do read a book that I don't like, I just don't leave a review. It's very rare that I'll even leave a star rating on books that I don't like, just because I'm trying to keep it positive. I don't want to be negative, but if you want to see the books that I just outright didn't like, you'll be able to see the ones that I've finished reading, if you're nosy. So if that's your thing, and no judgment, because I'm just the same way. No judgment. If you want to have a look, if you want to do that, follow me on Goodreads. I'm there under Summer Canon. So I'm sorry I don't get to talk about a book this week. I am actually very sorry about that because that's been my favorite part. So far this year, this is only the second book that I haven't enjoyed. And I've been telling people when talking about this, the amazing talent on display when reading this set of monsters that are frequently overlooked, are often dismissed. It's not everybody's favorite. And it's been such a pleasure for me to read these books that are so well written, so well put together, and such a joy to read. So it kind of bums me out when I run across one that I just didn't like. And I very, very vehemently did not like this last one. But onward and upward, we'll try again next week. I do have some good news on the movie front though, but don't get excited because I'm talking about a made-for-TV movie from the 1970s. So just saying that, you'll know to kind of temper your expectations because those movies are very much, they are what they are. So the movie that I want to talk about is Moon of the Wolf. It's from 1972 and it was a made-for-TV movie. I had kind of a small crisis thinking about this because I was born in 1983, but these kind of things like the movie of the week, that was still kind of a thing in my childhood. I remember movie of the week, the movie that would come on Friday nights on like CBS. I remember that. And I was thinking about that as I was reading up on this movie, and it was like, you immediately go to, oh, those were simpler times. That's such a strange thing. Does anybody else have kind of a weird internal crisis at the thought of someone in the future looking back to now and saying, oh, those were simpler times? God. But anyway, the movie is Moon of the Wolf. And again, made for TV. They can't show a lot. There are people murdered in this movie, and they show just enough, like a body kind of shoved in the corner, and there's furniture kind of blocking most of the view, but you'll see like a leg with a little bit of blood splattered on it. And look, for monster movies and all that stuff, I am a huge fan of gratuitous gore. Huge fan. But I also have to admit that I have a respect for restrained video storytelling where you have to be able to see some of what's going on to be part of the storytelling. I respect the restraint that this movie showed. And it's not new and fresh. It's not a story you've never seen before, but it is a fun movie to watch. It's a little slow. I won't lie to you. It's a little slow. The monster that you do eventually see, it is exactly what you think you would see in a 1970s made-for-TV movie. My kids were down there with me when I was watching it, and they had a good laugh over it. It is what it is, and it's not trying to be anything else. I don't want to give too much about the story away, but because I'm immersing myself in werewolves this year, it's amazing to me how much of werewolf stories are small town cop versus the werewolf. Small town cop versus the werewolf. I'm running across it a lot, actually. And I'm not mad about it. I like it. It's not like it's the World War II werewolf thing that I don't like. I like it. I just didn't realize there was so much of that out there. But yeah, it's a fun little movie. It's a cheap movie, and it's not full. You know exactly where it's going pretty fast. You know what's what, and there are no surprises. There are no effects that are going to blow your hair back. It is what it is, but it's a fun movie to watch. If you're just going to be sitting back, chilling, having a snack, having a drink, it's a fun movie to watch. There are actually some familiar faces in this one too. So give it a chance. Something else I want to talk about is I was made aware of this movie by a podcast that I really like. It's called Monster Attack. And I want to read to you because I want to recommend this podcast because I've had a blast listening to this podcast in the past. Monster Attack is a podcast dedicated to old monster movies, the ones we all grew up with and fell in love with. These are the films that opened up a new world of scary creatures, sci-fi wonders, and frightening tales of the supernatural. Former radio personality Jim Adams revisits a time when radioactive dinosaurs threatened Tokyo, werewolves terrorized the population at large, and mad scientists conducted hideous experiments in large mansions. And they do a lot of really old movies, like drive-in old movies, and they're all centered around monsters. And they've done werewolves quite a few times. This week, or was it last week? Last week they did Moon on the Wolf, but the week before they did The Wolfman. They revisited the 1941 movie The Wolfman. They cover all kinds of monsters, and it's a really fun show to talk about. They're a little older than me. They're the previous generation, so I didn't grow up with these movies when they were new. I still grew up watching these movies because they were on the standard channels before you had to start paying for cable. These movies were playing all the time, so I saw a lot of these movies. And this is such a fun throwback podcast because talking about some of these movies, talking about how they were made, talking about the actors that were in them, it's a really fun podcast. So they're not long episodes. They range from about a half hour to 45 minutes, maybe an hour, but they're fun. They're really fun to listen to. Totally recommend it. All the information will be below so you can find it. But yeah, that's how I found out about this one. I was like, oh, I've never seen Moon of the Wolf. I loaded it up on Tubi. It's on Tubi right now, by the way. And immediately I was like, oh, is this made for TV? Because I wanted to watch it before I went to IMDb and read the trivia on it. And yeah, very obviously made for TV. And that might turn some people off, but it just endeared it to me just because I am one of those old-fashioned hags. I can't help it. But this movie is based on a book. The movie is called Moon of the Wolf. It's based on a book by the same name by Leslie H. Whitten. It's currently out of print. You can get it secondhand, but oh boy, I'd love to get a hold of that because I'd like to read this. They diluted the story and made it into a made-for-TV movie that I enjoyed. Certainly, I would enjoy the more concentrated book form of this. I mean, what's not to like? Louisiana Bayou, poor families versus rich families, ancestral sicknesses. Come on. It was a fun movie. So I did watch another movie afterwards on Tubi. Now, this movie, I didn't like it. My kids hated it even more than I did, but it's made by the same people who made a movie that I did like, A Werewolf in England. So there's a thing for that. This movie is made by the same people, has some of the same actors in it, same director, and this movie took itself very seriously, and it delivered itself very seriously. And the thing is it had good intentions. The story, the premise was interesting, but the execution ended up not working. And I think what went wrong with this movie is, you know the saying, how everything's poisonous, it's just the dosage that'll kill you, not the thing itself. That's kind of what happened here. We start seeing the werewolves very early. It's constant action, so much so that it becomes the norm. You know, in normal movies, there's supposed to be a build to action. And then you have your lull times where we're doing exposition, where we're learning more about our characters. There's something about this, because that action was so ubiquitous throughout this, that when we did have down times where we're trying to get to know our characters more, it felt dead. It felt like there was absolutely no movement to the plot going forward. And it ended up being, despite having monsters everywhere, dozens and dozens of werewolves, and when you pull out of it and look at it from afar, it is an interesting story. It just ended up being kind of boring. And I mean, I'll go ahead and say it's Werewolf Castle is the name of the movie. As much as I really enjoyed A Werewolf in England, where a movie that didn't take itself too seriously, a movie that tried for a bit of humor, it was the non-pretentious approach that I really ended up liking about A Werewolf in England. And that's not to say that Werewolf Castle was loaded with pretension or anything. It wasn't. It was a good idea that just ended up not working in execution. And there's never one person to blame for that. It's one of those things, you watch these kinds of movies enough, you read up on them. It's time constraints, it's money, it's conflicting personalities during the editing. It's all kinds of stuff that can go wrong, and it ends up being kind of sad. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend this one. I do still recommend A Werewolf in England. Absolutely watch that one. I had a blast watching it. And I liked Moon of the Wolf. I'm sorry there's no book to talk about this week. I really am. But barf. If I start talking about it, I'm going to lose all facade of zen and calm here. And I'm just going to rage again because I just... So that'll be it this week. Hopefully next week's book will be better. Hopefully the hunt for better movies next week will be better. But for it being a made-for-TV movie, Moon of the Wolf is fun. Find it on Tubi. If you like it, let me know. If you hate it, let me know. Come talk to me, please. I'm lonely. But that'll be it. I will see you again next week with more to offer in your, hopefully, fellow hunt on Good Things Werewolf. So, bye.